"You won't find me here when you come back." That was the last thing I said to her. The sentence fell between us like an axe into soft wood. Final, heavy, maybe even a little pathetic. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just said it as the music thumped behind us and the torches flickered along the shoreline. She paused, tilted her head, then she laughed. Not nervously, not sweetly. She laughed like I'd told her the punchline to some sitcom she never respected. Like the idea of me leaving, really leaving, was so outrageous, it deserved nothing but amusement. And then she went back to dance with him. I didn't leave right away. I stood there a moment, trying to figure out how I'd gotten to that exact point. How I'd gone from the man who used to make her breakfast in bed to the man whose boundaries were comedy material. The sand felt cold under my feet, the kind of cold that climbs. I didn't say goodbye. I walked through the trees behind the beach and left the way I came, alone. No one noticed, not even her. But while she twirled under string lights and music with a man who wasn't her husband, I made the quietest, most serious decision of my life. And no, it didn't come with fireworks. It started with a taxi ride I never planned to take. A deleted shared album, a phone dropped into a motel toilet, and then silence. Because when I disappeared, I didn't slam doors or leave letters. I didn't rage on social media or pack bags dramatically. I did what she never expected. I meant it. And what happened after? Let's just say people don't laugh the same when the joke's over. When I stepped out onto the main road, I didn't even know where I was going. My phone had 12% battery, I had sand in my shoes, and I was still wearing the button-down shirt she told me actually looked decent for once. I remember that detail because it came out between sips of her second mojito, right before she asked Mark to show her how the locals move. I didn't go home. I didn't even go to a hotel. I took a rideshare into town, booked a last-minute room at a run-down inn behind a seafood shack, and sat on the edge of a bed that smelled faintly like mildew and regret. I stared at the wall for almost an hour. No TV, no music, just silence. The kind of silence that grows teeth and bites if you sit in it long enough. The texts started at 11:42 p.m. Sarah, "Hey, where are you? You being dramatic?" Sarah, "Seriously, Ethan, stop sulking. It's just a party." Sarah, "Come back. I'm getting tired of pretending you didn't storm off." At 12:19 a.m., she finally called. I let it ring. Then again at 12:26 and 12:40. By 1 a.m., she switched to voice messages. The first one started with an annoyed sigh. The second one was all laughter in the background and a fake pout voice. "Ethan, come back. You're being so weird." But the third one was the one that did it. The one that snapped something loose inside me. Her voice was lower, slurred. I could hear wind and waves behind her. "If you think walking away made you look strong, you're wrong. You're just a coward. This is why people think you're soft, Ethan. You don't do anything. You just sit there and feel sorry for yourself." That was the moment I stood up, grabbed my phone, and started deleting everything. Photos, threads, shared notes, our Spotify playlist, gone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just erased. Quietly, meticulously. And the whole time, all I could think was, she actually laughed when I drew a line. She never thought I'd walk. And maybe a part of me didn't either. But there I was, out of the house, off the radar, and for once, not explaining myself. The morning after, I got a message from her sister, Chloe. "What happened? Sarah's freaking out. Said you disappeared." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew that if I opened the door even a crack, I'd get pulled back in. And I wasn't sure I'd survive it this time. Not the gaslighting, not the denial, not the pretending that I was overreacting again. I just couldn't do it anymore. But here's the thing. Silence screams louder than any words I ever said. By noon, she was calling my office. By 2 p.m., she'd sent an email with the subject line, "Can we talk without you acting like a ghost?" I didn't open it. Because while she was busy playing catch-up, I was busy remembering things. Things I'd buried. Little moments, offhand insults, half-lies that I swallowed because I didn't want to fight. All of it came back like shards. And that's when I started to really question. How long had I been the joke in my own marriage? I didn't have the answer then, but I was about to find out. Because later that night, in a moment of weakness or curiosity or something in between, I finally opened her cloud gallery. And what I saw there wasn't just betrayal. It was proof. I didn't mean to open her hidden album. That wasn't the plan. I wasn't looking to punish myself. I wasn't even trying to snoop. But in that dim little motel room, with the curtains drawn against the blinding Carolina sun and the silence pushing on my chest like a weight, I made the mistake of logging into the shared cloud account we set up when we got married. It wasn't well hidden, just buried under a folder called Backup Events. I clicked without thinking. At first, it looked like nothing. Pictures of last year's Christmas party, a few shots from her yoga retreat, random selfies with our cat. But then I saw the album labeled Workshop Asheville. I almost laughed. I remembered that trip. It was supposed to be a week-long professional development seminar. I hadn't been invited. No spouses allowed, she'd said. It's all networking and lectures. She came back exhausted, cranky, and oddly distant for a few days. But I chalked it up to travel fatigue. I even picked her up from the train station with her favorite cinnamon rolls. She kissed my cheek like she was kissing a wall. The album opened slow, like the phone was hesitating too. The first photo was tame. Her in a conference room, name tag, coffee in hand. But the third, it was a mirror selfie from a hotel bathroom, hair down, lipstick fresh, wearing a silk robe that I didn't recognize. Photo after photo came next. Her lying across hotel beds, half-dressed. Her holding 2 champagne flutes. Her posing with her leg playfully draped over someone's lap. Only his hand was visible, resting low on her thigh. And then a picture of her and Mark. Full view, faces flushed, sitting far too close on a rooftop bar. Her hand clearly under the table, his head tilted like he was whispering something only meant for her. I sat frozen. Not angry, not even heartbroken, just hollow. I don't know how long I sat like that. Eventually, my stomach turned and I ran to the motel bathroom to vomit. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease of it, the confidence. She'd saved these, not hidden well, not buried deep, like some part of her wanted to be caught, or worse, didn't care if she was. My hands were shaking, but I kept scrolling. The timestamp showed these weren't isolated incidents. Asheville was 6 months ago. There were pictures from a brewery festival 2 months later. Then one from just 3 weeks before the beach party. Sarah and Mark in a lounge, her lips on his neck. It wasn't a fling, it was a relationship. And I had been the placeholder husband, the accessory she wore to family events and holiday dinners. I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror, pale and sweat damp. I looked like someone who'd just crawled out of a collapsed house. I didn't call her. I didn't even cry. Something colder settled inside me, a kind of numb clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, a deliberate, ongoing deception. And the worst part? She thought I'd never leave, that I didn't have the spine, that I'd always take the insult, swallow the doubt, and stay quiet. So I decided to change the story, not with screaming or revenge, but with disappearance. I booked a rental car, picked a city 5 hours west, somewhere she wouldn't think to look, somewhere with a cheap sublet I could pay in cash. I stopped sharing my location, canceled all upcoming payments tied to our joint card, and packed what little I'd brought into a grocery bag. I didn't leave a goodbye. I left her exactly what she gave me: silence. And yet, I knew it wouldn't stay silent for long. because soon she'd go from laughing at my warning to realizing I meant it. And that's when the real panic would begin. I didn't check my phone for 2 full days, not even once. I bought a burner at a gas station on the edge of town, paid cash, and slid my real phone into a drawer at the sublet I found through a guy named Marvin, who barely spoke a word but didn't ask any questions. The place was tiny, a dusty one-bedroom tucked above an abandoned thrift shop, with creaky floors and a shower that rattled when the water turned warm. But it was perfect, because no one knew where I was. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel watched, judged, measured. I just was. On the third morning, curiosity, or maybe weakness, got the better of me. I pulled out my old phone, turned it on, and let the avalanche hit. 42 missed calls, a dozen voicemails, dozens of texts, not just from Sarah, but from her sister, 2 of her coworkers, even her mother. The tone of the messages had shifted completely. Gone was the mocking or dismissiveness. In its place, confusion, panic, urgency. Sarah, where the hell are you? Are you okay? Please just respond. Sarah, this isn't funny. You're scaring me. Come home. We need to talk. Sarah, I know you're mad, but disappearing isn't the answer. One of the voicemails stopped me cold. It was her voice, trembling now, barely above a whisper. I don't know what you saw, but I swear it's not what you think. Please, Ethan, I made a mistake. You can't just vanish. Come home. I'll explain everything. Explain everything? What exactly did she think could be explained about wrapping herself around another man? Over and over again, while I paid the mortgage, folded the laundry, and listened to her complain about deadlines. I stared at the screen, watching the tiny play button blink, and something strange hit me. She wasn't upset because she was sorry. She was upset because I finally did something, because I'd broken the role she had written for me. The quiet, spineless husband who mumbled concerns she could laugh off over wine. And it turns out, me leaving? That wasn't in her script. Later that night, a message popped up that didn't come through the cloud. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Short, to the point. She's trying to find you. She's telling people you're unstable, says you need help. My stomach dropped. I typed back, "Who is this?" But there was no reply. The next day, my bank account locked me out. Then my email. Then our shared Netflix account, of all things. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to reclaim control, to yank the steering wheel back. But here's what she didn't realize. I was already miles ahead. I had withdrawn my savings, split the joint account weeks before the beach trip, and backed up every photo and message I found to a secure drive. She wasn't going to gaslight me into a corner this time. I was tired of being the joke. But Sarah, she was just getting started. Because a few days later, she drove to my parents' house, crying on the porch like a widow, claiming I had vanished in a depressive episode and begging them to help bring me home. She didn't know I'd already told them everything. My mother answered the door stone-faced and said, "If he wants you, he'll find you." Sarah didn't respond, just turned and left. And I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Because that night, someone tried to break into the sublet. The lock was busted. No one got in. But the message was clear. She didn't want to explain. She wanted to erase. And that's when I realized. I couldn't just disappear. I had to show the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the lock, cracked just enough to know someone had tried to get in. I sat in the corner of the sublet's cramped living room, with a dull kitchen knife in one hand and my backup hard drive in the other, watching shadows crawl across the walls like they had something to confess. I wasn't afraid for my life, exactly. I was afraid of being silenced, of being buried under the version of me Sarah was already feeding to the world. The unstable husband narrative, it was genius, honestly. Easy to sell. Easy to sell.
Moody, withdrawn, disappears after a minor argument. It practically writes itself. And once that label sticks, everything else becomes colored by it. Suddenly, her betrayal is excused as self-care, and my escape becomes a crisis. She was painting over her guilt with my silence, stroke by stroke. But I had something she didn't: proof. That morning, I drove 30 miles into the next town, found a coffee shop with a password-free Wi-Fi connection, and created a fresh, anonymous Reddit account. Not this one, a decoy, with no ties, no breadcrumbs. I wrote carefully. I didn't use our real names. I didn't mention cities or specific dates. I just told the story. A husband discovers his wife's months-long affair with her coworker after she mocks his boundary at a company retreat. He leaves without fanfare, finds images on a shared cloud account, and begins to piece together how long the deception had been happening behind his back. And then I posted screenshots, carefully redacted but undeniable. Her laughing on Mark's lap in a hotel room. The texts where she told him she felt more alive with him than she ever had with me. The voice message where she called me soft and mocked my fragile little feelings. I didn't editorialize. I didn't call her names. I just let the screenshots speak. And they screamed. The post went viral within hours. It started trending on relationship subs, thousands of comments. People weren't just angry for me, they were furious. They dissected the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the way she twisted every expression of concern into weakness. Some even recognized the dynamic from their own relationships. And suddenly, it wasn't just my story, it was ours. But what I didn't expect was what came next. Someone sent the post to Mark's fiancée. Yeah, he was engaged. I didn't even know. Her name was Amanda, and she messaged me directly through Reddit using a throwaway of her own. Her tone was raw, not angry, not bitter, just stunned. She had no idea. Said they were supposed to get married in 6 weeks, and she thought Sarah was just a friend. She asked me for the rest of the evidence.
I hesitated, but I sent her everything. Not out of spite, out of mercy. No one deserves to walk into a marriage wearing a blindfold someone else tied for them. 2 days later, Mark was fired from the company. Turns out Amanda worked in HR, corporate HR, high up. And suddenly, everything began to crumble. Sarah's professional reputation shaken. Friends at work ghosted her. The people she once bragged to about teaching her husband boundaries were now quietly untagging themselves from her posts. She tried to control the narrative again, posted a tearful video on her private Instagram talking about betrayal and a malicious campaign from someone she trusted. But the comments weren't what she expected. Because when lies fall apart in public, they don't just crack, they shatter. And people remember who laughed first. But none of that gave me joy. There was no victory in watching her squirm, no satisfaction in seeing her facade collapse. Because while she was busy patching her image, I was still alone in a dusty sublet, wondering how the hell I had given so many years to someone who thought of me as a punchline. And just when I thought I'd reached the end of it, the doorbell rang. No knock, just the single shrill ring of that busted little doorbell I didn't know even worked. I looked through the peephole. It wasn't her. It was someone worse. The doorbell echoed again, louder this time. My body tensed like a sprung trap as I took a slow step toward the peephole. I expected Sarah. I was ready for Sarah. The dramatics, the tears, maybe even the rage. But what I saw standing on the other side of that weather-warped door wasn't her. It was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-50s, maybe early 60s. Expensive jacket, leather briefcase, the kind of demeanor that said, "I don't knock twice." His car, parked crooked in front of the building, was a black Audi with government plates. I didn't open the door.
Instead, I cracked the window and called down, "Can I help you?" He didn't look up at first, just adjusted his sleeves, checked his watch. Then, finally, he turned and spoke loud enough for me to hear. "You're Ethan Kane, correct?" I hesitated, then lied. "No. I saw you through the window 20 seconds ago. Let's not waste time."
I should have ignored him. Should have closed the blinds and called Marvin to change the locks again. But something in his voice, calm, sure, surgical, froze me in place. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Just a crack, just enough for his next words to hit like a brick through glass. "I represent a private law firm that has recently taken an interest in your wife's situation." He said "your wife" like it was a technical term, like Sarah was a file on a desk, not a person who'd once cried in my arms during thunderstorms. "I'm not interested," I said, already starting to close the door. Then he added, "You should be. She's pressing harassment claims, digital defamation, emotional distress. She's naming you in a potential suit." I stopped. He didn't flinch. Just extended a single manila envelope through the small gap. "You'll want to read this carefully." My hands didn't shake as I took it. They should have. But I think I was beyond adrenaline, beyond fear. I was drifting through something else entirely, a space where betrayal didn't sting anymore. It just hummed like background radiation. He turned to leave. No pitch, no threat, just a final glance over his shoulder. "You know," he said, "in my line of work, we see a lot of couples tear each other apart. But usually, it's cleaner when one of them actually has a soul." Then he was gone. I locked the door, closed the blinds, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the envelope. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee, burned toast, poured the coffee, drank it cold. Then I opened it. It wasn't just legal threats. It was a full dossier. Photos, transcripts, posts, a printed copy of my Reddit thread annotated in red pen, notes from her therapist, apparently handed over voluntarily, a letter from her attorney describing her as an emotionally compromised woman recovering from the psychological abuse of a controlling partner. That last part made me laugh, loudly, ugly. Controlling? I'd begged her to come home for dinner twice a week. I'd asked her to spend less time with the man she was cheating with. I'd paid for her Pilates classes, edited her graduate school essays, waited up for her until 2 a.m. when she lost track of time. And I was the controlling one? I dropped the envelope onto the table and stared at it like it was a dead animal. It wasn't just an attack. It was a rewrite. She was trying to flip the script, cast herself as the wounded heroine and me as the dangerous ghost haunting her happy ending. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how much truth I was still holding. She didn't know I had her voice recordings, full conversations where she admitted to lying about her whereabouts. She didn't know I had screen captures of her mocking me in group chats with her coworkers, calling me pathetic but loyal, telling Mark I was too scared to leave, even if he saw us effing on a billboard. She didn't know I'd already sent all of it to 3 different friends with instructions to go public if anything happened to me. I wasn't just playing defense anymore, and I wasn't going to let her burn me to keep her reputation warm. The next morning, I emailed her attorney directly. Just one line. "I hope your client has a good explanation for these." Attached were 7 files. That was all. By noon, the phone rang. It was Sarah. Blocked number. I answered. Her voice was quiet. No more laughing. "Ethan," she said, "we need to talk. Not over email, not like this. Please." I didn't respond, because this time I was finally ready to talk, but not on her terms. I agreed to meet her, but not because I wanted to. There was no curiosity left in me. No part of me ached for her explanations or apologies.
I wasn't hoping she'd cry or confess or collapse under guilt. I just wanted her to see me. Not the version she mocked behind my back, not the version she sold to her lawyer, but the man who finally stopped begging to be believed. We met in a quiet diner 2 towns over. I picked the location. Neutral ground, middle of nowhere. No crowd, no familiar faces, just 4 Formica tables, sun-faded menus, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Bush administration. She walked in 10 minutes late, wearing a blouse I remembered buying her for our anniversary 2 years ago. That used to mean something. Now it looked like a costume. Her attempt to summon nostalgia, to conjure warmth from ashes. She sat across from me, eyes scanning my face like she didn't recognize it anymore. I didn't say a word, just slid a flash drive across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "I want you to watch every file on that drive before you say a single thing." She gave a tight, bitter smile. "More Reddit posts? More twisted storytelling?" "Your voice," I said, "is in 4 of those recordings. Are you saying I made that up, too?" She didn't answer. Her hand closed around the drive like it might burn her. She slipped it into her purse and looked out the window, pretending to study the parking lot.
"I didn't come here to fight, Ethan," she muttered. "You came here because you realized I'm not bluffing," I replied. She flinched, then turned back to me, arms folded. "Look, I know I hurt you. I made mistakes. But this, dragging me through the mud, getting me fired by proxy, turning strangers against me, this isn't you. You're not like this." "No," I said quietly. "I wasn't. But you are." That landed. I watched her jaw tighten, her lips press into a thin line. She wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't stammer or shrink or give her the benefit of the doubt out of habit. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a folder, legal size. She slid it toward me. "I'm dropping the claim. My lawyer doesn't know yet, but I'll make sure it's done. I need this to stop." I didn't touch the folder. "Why?" I asked. "Because you feel bad, or because people finally saw what's behind your smile?" Her voice cracked just a little. "Because I don't know who I am anymore." I nodded slowly. "Welcome to the club." We sat in silence for what felt like a full minute. Just the 2 of us, breathing in the wreckage we'd built brick by brick. She looked like she wanted to say something else, something meaningful, maybe redemptive. But the words never came. Instead, she opened her mouth, then shut it again, and dropped her gaze to the table. I slid a piece of paper across to her next. This time, it was mine. It was the finalized dissolution agreement. No alimony, no drawn-out court battles, just a clean split. Everything else had already been moved. Funds, furniture, digital assets. I'd handled it weeks ago. All I needed was a signature. She stared at it like it was written in another language. "You already?" "Yes," I said. "While you were busy rewriting history, I wrote an ending." She didn't cry. I think a part of her wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Maybe because she still hadn't fully accepted that the man sitting across from her wasn't hers anymore, that her grip on me, emotional, mental, strategic, had finally broken. She signed it. No handshake, no hug, no last-minute confession. She slid the paper back, stood up, and without another word, walked out of the diner. And I sat there a while longer, watching her through the glass, watching the woman I once thought I'd grow old with disappear into a car that didn't even belong to her. She must have borrowed it. Or maybe Mark gave it to her before his world fell apart too. I didn't care. It didn't matter. Because this time, I wasn't the one who disappeared. This time, I stayed. And she's the one who finally understood what it felt like to come back and find nothing waiting for her. 2 weeks passed after that final meeting. I didn't hear from her again.
No calls, no emails, no last-ditch efforts to rewrite the past or salvage her image. Maybe she was finally tired. Or maybe she'd finally accepted that I wasn't coming back. Not this time, not ever. I spent those days slowly rebuilding a rhythm. I'd wake early, open the windows of the sublet, and sit on the balcony with a cheap cup of coffee, watching the street come to life. I didn't rush to find a new job. I didn't throw myself into anything at all, really. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to be still, to breathe without waiting for the next apology that never came. I wasn't healed, but I was healing. And then one morning, I got a message on my burner phone. It was from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, Ethan, this is Amanda. Hope this isn't too weird. I just wanted to thank you." Amanda, Mark's fiancée, or rather, ex-fiancée. I hadn't expected to ever hear from her again. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But her message kept going. "You saved me. What you posted, what you shared, it gave me answers I didn't even know I needed. It was painful, but it set me free. And I just wanted you to know, you're not weak. You're brave as hell." I sat there rereading it for several minutes. It wasn't the compliment that got to me. It was the clarity in her words. For so long, I had been gaslit into thinking that my hurt made me fragile, that being honest made me pathetic, that drawing boundaries was a flaw. But here was someone who lived a different version of my pain, telling me that doing the hard thing, walking away, didn't make me small. It made me strong. She ended the message with something simple. "If you ever want to talk to someone who gets it, I'm around." And for once, I didn't hesitate. I wrote back. We started slow, just messages, then a phone call, then another. We didn't talk about our exes much, not after the first couple of times. We talked about music, about hiking trails she loved, about the kind of life we both thought we'd lost, and were now slowly, cautiously rebuilding. She wasn't a rebound. I wasn't hers either. We were something else entirely. Two people who had been burned badly enough to recognize warmth when it came honestly. 3 months later, I left the sublet, moved to a new city, took a job doing freelance design, something I hadn't done since college. I even adopted a dog, a stubborn, aging mutt with a crooked tail who follows me around like I'm the only person left on Earth. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. The man who stood on that beach, begging for respect and being laughed at, is gone. The man who let himself become a footnote in his own life, gone too. And in his place is someone new, someone whole. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't scream or fight or prove your worth. Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is walk away and mean it.